See what I mean? Down here in the taskbar, my Photoshop's open, so I don't need to keep waiting. I just have to turn it, click it to turn it on. So anyway, here we go. Let's see if we can get this done in 15 minutes. We're going to start with the first question, talks about a file that is unprocessed. Just think of food. Raw is unprocessed. It's going to have more data than a JPEG. A JPEG is going to be a file that has some compression, and it's going to be a smaller file, but it also, you lose some of the quality. So especially if you're trying to blow up a picture, make it really, really large, you want that high quality raw. All right, this is about how your words look on the in the software. And so the first thing is the space between a pair of letters. So actually, I like to tell my students kerning, like having a kernel of corn stuck between your teeth. That's the space. You got to open that space between two letters. That's kerning. Now, if it's all the letters, it's tracking. So it's all the characters in a block of text, like the track in the Olympics, all the people running and they're getting farther away from each other, or all are getting closer together. Leading has to do with the line spacing. So L for line of text. That's the space between these lines. See how there's empty space? That's your leading. If you're making a poster, you're printing it, and that's going to be your CMYK. As a reminder, cyan, magenta, yellow, black. CMYK for print. RGB would be for your screen. Okay, which is not a factor. We want to make sure we're paying attention to the not here. It doesn't matter what your own style is. You got to go with the purpose, the desires of the client, and the audience. So what's not a factor is your own style. Do what the boss tells you. Okay, we're working with photography and we don't want to make any permanent changes on this project. So we're going to use what we call non-destructive editing. The rest of these are not the proper terms. Just memorize non-destructive editing. When you apply a filter to a text layer, if you want to make sure that the type is still editable, you're going to use a smart object. You're going to convert it to a smart object, and that will protect that layer of type so you can make changes to it later. When pasting, remember you can copy and paste pixels in Photoshop. We can copy and paste smart objects, and then we can copy and paste paths. An SVG is a file type for vectors. CSS is a programming language for websites. We're not going to copy and paste masks and vectors. We don't use vectors in Photoshop. So just memorize PPS, pixels, path, smart object. We can paste as. When you're changing grid lines or even guidelines, that's going to be a preference. We're going to go to Edit, Preferences are going to be at the very bottom, and we'll see Guides, Grids. So in this case, they want the grid down here to be dashed. And I've already done this question, so it's already at 64 every pixels and one subdivision. Make sure that you've got those correct. And if you want to see it, you've got to go up to View, Show, Grid. And there it is. The lasso tool is the third tool. You may or may not see it depending on your default setting. So you got to click and hold possibly to make your lasso show up. They want us to use the content aware fill. So we're going to circle around our balloon, and that grid is kind of messing me up. I'm going to turn that grid off. It's trying to help me to select based on the grid, which is okay. But now to do the content aware fill, we're going to go edit, fill, not directly to content aware fill here. We're going to fill content aware. This is how they want the question to be done. So be careful about that. Edit, fill, and then Control D will deselect, and we can go ahead and click next. We're making a new document. When you make a new document, file new, I want to make sure that I don't use anything that's recent. I want to go to the preferences across the top. So it says video. So here's my film and video, far right. And then I'm going to pick the preset it's asking for. It says to change the name to movie. Make sure you capital MOVIE, or else it will count it wrong if you don't make it a capital. Great. Print settings, Control P or File, Print. They want us to change the color handling to be Photoshop manages the colors. So right here in the middle, color, Photoshop manages colors. Print. Don't click print, just click done. We don't need to print a bunch of this, just done. Styles, you probably aren't going to see that window, so you're going to have to go up to Window and find your Styles panel. And it tells you you're going to use the word C to look for that style that's called C. And now we got to make sure we put it on the right layer. So I like to try to keep my layers open as much as I can. It's going to be on the circle. So I'm going to make sure my circles are selected. I can drag that style to my circles, and then you'll see in the back how it changed blue. We talked about tracking. Remember all the letters. Now you get to see what that looks like. See how squished this is? We're going to go to our horizon, to the text layer here. If I double click on the T, it selects it for me. I can go to my properties panel and change my tracking here. And if you kind of hover over, click and drag, or click into this box, you see it says set tracking. They want 10. And then this is what it looks like for the kerning over here, with like the floss between the letters, like to get that kernel out of your teeth. That's the kerning. But we're going to use the tracking and hit enter so that it takes effect. You can see how it spread out, and good the check at the top in our options panel, our options bar. Display the rulers, Control R, or go to View, Rulers, Control R will put the rulers on. And then if you right click on the ruler itself, you can change it to pixels. Creating a brush, I've got my brush tool here. I'm going to go over and look for my brush panel. I may not see it here. No, I don't. So I'm going to go to Window, Brush, here, alphabetical order. Brush settings is actually what I want. And to start off with, I've already done this a couple times, but we want to make sure that the size is 19 because it says 19 here. And then at the bottom, I can click the plus sign here to make my new brush called Tablet with a capital T and a capital B for brush. Click OK. And then the way it's worded here, there you might get a little confused at first, wondering where's the size jitter. You have to go find the shape dynamics. So it's the second choice here. I click shape dynamics. Now I can make sure my size jitter and my angle jitter are correct. And they're already that way from earlier. It's easy to just type the numbers in there if you need to. Once it's set up, just click next and you're good to go. The crop tool to straighten. Remember, the trick on this is when we click on the crop tool, we've got to go up to our options panel and pick our straighten tool, and you're following the crooked line, that crooked horizon. Click and drag. So you got to follow what's crooked, and it makes it straight for you. And then just remember to hit enter or the check mark at the top. Mine's kind of hidden, so I'm just hit enter. All right, our adjustments, our adjustment layers. So if I want to, I can see them here in the adjustments here. I can also, just to show you another way to do this, in my panels, my layers, where's my layer? Here's my layer. At the bottom, I've got this round half and half. Here we go. It's got the curves here. So when I click it, it automatically adds it to my layers. That way you know you got it. Okay, if you've done any training in Illustrator, you remember the Pathfinder tool. This question wants us to cut away like a cookie cutter. We're going to cut using a square. We're going to cut a square out of our thin rectangle here. And so to do that, I want to make sure I'm on my rectangle layer. I'm going to go over here. We're going to find our rectangle tool and we're going to make a square, but I don't want to actually make a square. I want to cut with a square. So at the very top of my options bar, I need to change it. So we're not making a new square, we're subtracting from. That's the whole key to this cut away. Sorry, my throat's a little scratchy here. We're going to click one time on the layer here so that I get the dialog box that I can turn that into 700 pixels by 700 pixels. And then remember it says from the center in our question here. So got to make sure that's checked from center. Click OK. And see how it took out that little bit of that long rectangle. New groups are basically, we're going to use our layer panel. Oops, if you lose your layer panel, go back up to window and find it, layers, here it is. The folder is our grouping. So we just double click to type TEXT, make sure you capitalize that, hit enter. Now I can drag those two text layers into the folder, and I know they're in there because if I close my folder, they disappear. So they're inside the folder. Creating a new file that has a width of, okay, we're going to go to File, New, because we're making a new file, and it's a pamphlet, so that's a print document, and then we're just going to give it the name pamphlet, and we're going to change it to pixels 1094 by 672. Click create, and we're good to go. Next. Skewing the circles. So again, I want to be in my layers. I want to be on the circle layer. That's the whole thing about Photoshop. Pay attention to what layer you're on. We're going to edit to skew. We're going to edit, transform. Edit, transform. There's all kinds of things we can do, rotate and everything. We're doing skew right now. And remember, so again, we're at the transform, skew, and then it's the options bar across the top. It wants 2 for horizontal and 10 for vertical, check mark, and it will skew it in the back. Next. Changing the opacity. We're going to be on the circles layer. There's my opacity. It's easier to just type 60. And then right next to it is my blending mode, hard light. Changing the word cafe, select, double click on that T, we'll select the word. Again, I can go to my properties panel and change this to Verdana regular.